It was actually
There
the
we go.
introduction was also in the announcement because I've heard so many times about my little bio. So
Okay, so I won't spend too long on your bio then, if you'll forgive me. I do just want to take a moment to welcome everyone. Thank you everybody for joining us here today. Um, Many of you, most of you, I'm sure, are already familiar with our guest, H.D. Goswami, but many, probably most of you are not aware of who I am. So I would do a short, brief intro of myself and thank you all for joining me here. My name is Suniti Devidasi, and I serve as the Administrative Director for ISKCON North America's regional governing body. And part of my service, I arrange various webinars, workshops, and conferences such as this to bring together and inspire leaders and devotees from across North America and from around the world, helping to keep Srila Prabhupada's mission alive and relevant. This is my goal in my service. So thank you all for joining us here today, and we'll be happy to hear from you. With no further ado, I think everyone, as you mentioned, is familiar with you. So go ahead and take it away.
yeah,
Nalini,
I'm
can
no.
you highlight him so we can see him? Thank you.
So thank you all very much for coming. Uh, I will begin. Now, I think that there are some points which I think are extremely important for the Hare Krishna movement going forward, and I'll try to make them clear for you. First of all, competition. A few words on competition. Um, First of all, Prabhupada liked it. And the reason I know that Prabhupada liked it is because he told me. In 19, was it 19, perhaps 75, 76, we had the December book distribution marathon, which in those days in ISKCON was like the Super Bowl and the World Series and the World Cup and everything put together. It was a huge thing, and the whole Hare Krishna movement was absolutely mobilized and intensely focused on this December marathon. The reigning champion, of course, was the Radha Damodar party under the leadership of my great godbrother Tamal Krishna Goswami. And it was very famous around the world that no one could defeat Radha Damodar, especially in the December marathon. And so, meanwhile, my zone in Latin America had been growing, and suddenly, out of nowhere, no one saw this coming. We started selling more books than anyone. In fact, Tamal Krishna, he's very competitive. He actually called me up. I was in Mexico City, pushing the book distribution, and he called me up, and he was extremely competitive. And he told me, "There's no way you're going to win. There's no way you're going to beat us." And I just kind of laughed and said, "Well, whatever Krishna wants." Anyway, we kept increasing, increasing, and finally, Latin America did actually win that year. And so, right after the marathon, both Tamal Krishna Goswami and myself flew to Los Angeles to be with Prabhupada because he had come to visit LA, and we were walking with him on the Palisades the park, if you know the beautiful park in Santa Monica overlooking the Santa Monica Bay. And Prabhupada, sort of in his own way of speaking, Tamal Krishna was on one side of Prabhupada, I was on the other side. And Prabhupada, more or less in his own language, said, "Hey, so he beat you. Are you going to take that? What are you going to do about that?" I mean, that's basically what Prabhupada was saying. And so we were just laughing because it was all, it was all Krishna conscious. And then Prabhupada, I remember very clearly, I'll never forget this. He stopped and he said, "I like this competition." And so those words, of course, went into my heart. And so I want to talk about what is competition. And so let me move on to that now. So because Prabhupada personally told me, I know. I also know what Prabhupada meant because we basically probably did 10 to 20 to 50 times more than we would have done if we weren't competing. And even in the spiritual world, there's competition. It's right there in the Nectar of Devotion, where the cowherd boys are running toward Krishna and they're competing to see who will be the first to touch Krishna, who will be the first to reach Krishna. So competition exists in the spiritual world among Krishna's personal associates. So the issue is not, is competition, is it something that fits into Krishna consciousness? That's not an issue. But there are concerns. So interestingly, the word competition comes from the same Latin root as the word competence. Competence, to do things well. The Latin, for those of you who are language lovers, it's com means together, which we still have in all the Latin languages, and petere in Latin means to aim at, to seek. So when you seek a goal together with another person, that is uh, competence, and that's also competition. And if you think about professional athletes, if you think about professional musicians or even amateurs, if you think about every walk of life, there is competition. And whether it's in music or whether it's in politics or whether it's in uh, anything, whether it's competing for a position in a university, sports, competition inspires people to do much more than they would have done if there was not competition. That's just the way the real world is. And so, of course, the concern is, and so if you have an ISKCON where that's not competing, you can imagine the results. So here's a quote from Prabhupada. Actually, a godbrother of mine sent me this quote saying, Prabhupada is writing to Advaita Prabhu, who a Prabhupada disciple who was in charge of ISKCON Press before it became the BBT. And I know the context of Prabhupada's statement because I was there at the time. I was a brahmachari and I was working in ISKCON Press in addition to other services. And so I knew all the people involved. That was so here's what Prabhupada said. I'm so glad the press workers have become enlivened in their work. This is required if we at all wish to be a truly worldwide organization. Please see that everything gets done with the cooperation of GBC. Everything must be done cooperatively. That's 21st January 71, Prabhupada writing from Allahabad. So here's the part that I want to add because I was there. We were competing. We were competing. Prabhupada himself would set the parameters for the competition. Prabhupada himself, for example, would say that, okay, these books should be out by this time. Don't delay. Or we were competing within ISKCON Press. That was not my main serve, but I was typing, helping to compose the text. And of course, because I was a young brahmachari, they gave me the graveyard shift, like 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And we were definitely competing, but it was in a very positive, friendly, fraternal mood. But we were competing. Then we were competing to sell books. Prabhupada himself absolutely, uh, how should I put it, inspired and pushed very hard on the book distribution competition. One time I went into Prabhupada's room in New York to visit him, actually in Brooklyn, and he knew that my zone in Latin America was growing very quickly. So he was very happy, smiled at me. And the first thing he said was, so, how many new books? How many new temples? How many new devotees? Prabhupada said that every time a new temple opens, it gives me Vaikuntha bliss. So at the same time, it's cooperative, it's fraternal, it's in a mood of a family. Just like if you have a family outing, let's say, and let's say a picnic or something, and there's like a three-legged race or something, or different kinds of competition, but it's all the family. It's a family outing. Everyone there loves each other. Everyone there is happy to be together, but they're competing. And so if you remove this competition, things can get very dull. Now, there are some questions about this, which is nice. So, um, I'm going to go to those questions. Devotees had some questions or doubts about competition, so I'll answer those questions. So one devotee wrote, how do we avoid the trap of spiritual competition becoming material competition? The same way I would say we avoid the trap in every devotional service. What if you're a temple president? What if you're a Sankirtan leader? What if you are in charge of the kitchen? What if you're a GBC? What if you're a guru? How do you avoid pride? How do you avoid um, crossing the line from selfless devotional service to devotional service where you want some personal benefit? And Lord Chaitanya talked about these three material motives that can contaminate devotional service when he said, Na dhanang na janang na sundarim. One can aspire to get to enrich oneself monetarily. Janam, one can seek followers or just public admiration. And then Sundarim, uh, sex attraction. Because when someone is sexually attracted to another person, there's a strong tendency to show off, to try to get attention. And so these three contaminants, these three mundane motives can infect any devotional service. Guru, GBC, bottle washer. You know, I wash bottles better than the other devotee next to me washes bottles. And so, therefore, strong Krishna consciousness. How do you avoid the trap? By Krishna consciousness. So, another one important in competition is good sportsmanship. How to apply this? Again, by being Krishna conscious. I had that personal experience with Prabhupada. So, because if you don't compete, that's also sense gratification in a sense. Because when you become a leader, when you take responsibility, uh, you can't just live a selfish life because you have to think about other people. It's like when you have children. If two people get married and have children, that's the end of their selfish life in a sense. When householders have children, they have to think of their children first. Before that, it's just all romance and love endorphins. And then as soon as you have children, you have to start thinking about the children. So wanting a sort of a carefree life where I don't have to worry about anything, I'm just going to please myself, go to, 90-hour kirtans or something, or just basically take care of myself, or do what I like to do in Krishna conscious, which has become very, very popular, pleasing yourself in bhakti yoga. And so, not competing, not taking responsibility also very easily becomes sense gratification. So there's danger at every step. Padang, padang. So therefore, that's boga tyaga. Because not taking responsibility, not becoming some kind of leader at some level, you're just in charge of yourself, seriously, that's the tyaga part, the sense gratification of giving up what's favorable for Krishna's service. And then boga is trying to enjoy things that are meant for Krishna's service. So it's boga tyaga. Choose your poison. And the real point is to stay in the center and do everything for Krishna. And since the first point of surrender is anukulyasya sankalpa, accepting what is favorable, Prabhupada has declared that it is favorable in a loving, Krishna conscious way to compete. So that's favorable. And we should accept it in Krishna consciousness, not in mundane consciousness. So, so the devotee said, devotees support each other, not that I win, you lose. Of course, that's mundane. So, good sportsmanship is compatible with someone winning. It's not that, let's say we have a book distribution marathon and everyone gets a participation trophy. Everyone knows that when they started with this woke stuff of participation trophies, it ruined it ruined the sports. So if I'm competing for Krishna's pleasure, not my own, then if I win, I don't try to enjoy that. And if I lose, I don't lament because it was just for Krishna. It wasn't for me. And therefore, simply knowing that by competing, I inspired other people to do their best, it was a success for Krishna. It was pleasing to Krishna. And whether I win or lose is not really the point. So again, it depends on what your intention is. Uh, so someone asked why this event here was not directly linked to Krishna West. Why? Because in Krishna West, we're nice people and we're not sectarian. And we are part of ISKCON and we want to encourage all of ISKCON. The Bhagavatam says several times that those who are in the material modes of nature are separatist. And the word the Bhagavatam uses is Prithak Drishti, a separatist vision. So in Krishna West, we're not separatists. We are part of Prabhupada's ISKCON, and we want to serve all of ISKCON. So that's the reason. Let's see. What are the psychological and sociological reasons for abandoning competition? Oh, pendulum effect. In the early days of the movement, the Hare Krishna explosion. Don't forget that explosions also can, destroy things. And so there was a Hare Krishna explosion, but it kind of went over the top in terms of passion and I mean it was good in the sense that all kinds of service was done, but I would say anyway, I won't go into the whole socio-historical analysis of that. I'm going to be really nice today. So, um, anyway, it's missing. We need to get it back for Prabhupada's sake. So sometimes the devotee's spiritual life is affected by unfavorable devotional company. One is encouraged to give up as a result of harsh criticism that discourages continued association. Over time, Krishna reveals himself through the sincere desire to serve and so on. So, first of all, if we understand Prabhupada's teachings, we know that everyone that comes to serve Krishna is a very special person. Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvidha bhajante mang jana sukritino arjuna. Everyone that approaches Krishna is sukriti. They have done a good deed. They should be respected for that. And as we know, devotees are rated in the Shastra and by Prabhupada. There's the Uttamadhikari, the Madhyamadhikari, the Kanishtadhikari. But we should be encouraging everyone, wherever someone is at. If we feel, in fact, those are three symptoms of a Madhyamadhikari. That one is that you try to encourage that you make friendship. No, let's get them in order, starting from the top. A Madhyamadhikari um, worships Krishna, makes friendship with devotees, and tries to help those who are less fortunate. And so if someone discourages other devotees, that person is third class, frankly, because the three qualifications of even a second class devotee are to make friendship with other devotees, not discourage them. And obviously, if you're friends with someone, the competition is not going to get nasty. And to encourage people who maybe need a little help. So if you are a Madhyamadhikari, there's no danger of competition going crazy. Ways to revive the mood of servitude towards devotees? Well, uh, you have to have a higher taste. That's what Krishna says right there in the Gita, that Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya. What that literally means is, in chapter 2, that if you are nirahara, which literally means fasting, it literally means fasting, but it also can mean taking in, like consumption, whether it means like, going on a shopping frenzy or, or in any way you're trying to enjoy, you're trying to gratify yourself with the material world in a sense, that's nirahara. But the central meaning is fasting, fasting. And so Krishna says if you fast nirahara, then the sense objects kind of retreat. I mean, if you try this, fast for 24 hours or 36 hours and, see how lusty you are. Or see, I mean, it just, so, so therefore, but Krishna says, but there's a problem. If it were that easy that you could just fast, you could just not take in the sense objects and you would be, free of material desires if it were only that easy, but it's not because Krishna says, Vishaya binivartante niraharasya dehinang rasavarjam rasopyasya parang drishtvan. Krishna says because even though maybe the conscious desire for sense gratification is not there, the taste is still there. One good meal and you're back in action. In terms of, we're back in action in terms of lust, in terms of greed, in terms of pride. All it takes is one really good meal. But then Krishna says, parang drishtva. But if you literally seeing something higher, that has been translated as higher taste. Literally, Krishna says, seeing something higher. Nivartate, then you actually become free of your material desires. So therefore, how do we do anything in the right consciousness for Krishna? I mean, how do we, I don't know, how do we water the Tulsi plant? How do we sell books? How do we do anything? You have to have a higher taste. We have to be advancing in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, what happens is that, according to psychology and social science, in general, when you have a powerful conversion experience, which can be to a political cause or a religious conversion, then for about roughly 2 years, you're like really excited, enthusiastic, and then you just kind of level off. And so if we don't maintain that enthusiasm, then when you are not experiencing something wonderful, you're not inclined to tell other people about it. I mean, imagine, to give a mundane example, someone sees a movie, they just love that movie. They want to tell their friends about it. In fact, Hollywood knows that you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars to promote a movie, but the movie will just crash and burn if it doesn't get good feedback from people that have already seen it. In other words, what really makes a movie a success is that people see the movie and they really like it and they tell their friends, you've got to see that movie. That's what, because otherwise, if you don't get that word of mouth, you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising. That'll just get you maybe a good opening weekend in Hollywood. That's all you're going to get for your $100 million in advertising, a good opening weekend. And then it'll just drop. And the movie ultimately is a failure. It's word of mouth. So if I am not continually renewing my excitement about Krishna consciousness, if I'm not continuing to have new realizations, which give me new inspiration, new enthusiasm, because every day my life is better than it was yesterday. If I'm really advancing, then every day I have great news to tell people about Krishna consciousness. Preaching is not where you just go and hammer the karmis. Preaching actually means that I'm so excited, I'm so enthusiastic that I just want to shout it from the rooftops. I want to tell the world about it. That's how a movement spreads, by the way. So, how do we avoid all these anarthas? By the serious practice of Krishna consciousness, by a higher taste, as we call it. So, women, someone who is not respectful and encouraging toward women is obviously in the bodily concept of life. There's no movement on earth that is preaching more than ISKCON. You're not your body. That's like our national anthem. You're not your body. And yet, so if a movement which is just constantly telling everybody else you're not your body, if the people saying that are hypocrites and they just see material bodies, that's very unfortunate. No one likes a hypocrite. And so, therefore, if we are actually Krishna conscious, then we don't see just bodies. We see, here's a great soul that's come to serve Krishna. Now, my duty to that soul is to do everything in my power to help that person, to encourage that person to serve Krishna according to their full ability. not to try to keep them down. Trying to keep other devotees down. The classic case is I'm a temple president and someone's talented, but no, I'm the temple president. I actually heard a temple president say that. He's no longer in ISKCON, which is no big surprise. But we were having a meeting. This would be like 20 years ago. I can't remember. We were having a big, like, national meeting. And one of the younger devotees was saying that we need more opportunity. We also need opportunity to be leaders. And this person's response was, tough luck. I already have the position, which it's obviously the kind of thing you don't forget. When there was controversy over the when we were the first gurus, and then other qualified people also wanted to be gurus. And I remember I used to get in trouble with some of the big gurus because I was always pushing to give everybody the same chance. And so one day, three or four of the like these most powerful gurus came into my room and told me basically to stop rocking the boat. And I said that, well, everyone should have the same opportunity. Everyone has to have this. And this person said to me, literally, literally, tough luck. The world's already taken. Of course, that person is no longer an active devotee in ISKCON. But so anyway, there's no substitute for Krishna consciousness. If we're Krishna conscious, we'll do it right. How to give the congregation a higher taste? By you having a higher taste and you inspiring them. If a leader doesn't have a higher taste, good luck for the congregation. And if the leader does have higher taste, then it's that higher taste should be trying to inspire others, trying to serve others, trying to get other people uh, to really love Krishna and love his service. So, in the past, we're told that Prabhupada said when giving out books, not spend much time preaching to a person, just pass the books. First of all, Prabhupada had hundreds and thousands of neophyte devotees. And but if they gave Prabhupada's books, then they'd be hearing from the greatest devotee. And also, if the person had a nice experience and actually read the book, they'd come to the temple. And that was my experience in Brazil. We were, for a few years, a world champion in book distribution, and lots of people came to the temples because of their personal contact with the devotees. So it's, we can do it all. So, I think that's enough on that. Now I'd like to go to a few other points, which my handlers have approved. And so, um, and that is, and this is my personal, well, I can dignify it by calling, if I call it a realization, I'm claiming I'm right. I think it's a realization, but you can judge for yourself. On what ISKCON really needs to do to rebuild, powerfully rebuild the Western mission, which was the key to Prabhupada's whole global strategy. I can't count how many times Prabhupada told me, if America becomes Krishna conscious, the whole world will follow. Prabhupada didn't just come for some local service. He wanted to save the planet. That's why Prabhupada came, to save the planet. And he had a strategy to save the planet. It was called making Krishna consciousness really successful in America. And of course, in Europe and other Western countries. That was Prabhupada's global strategy. So I'm not going to be a fool and think that I can invent another strategy. I'm not going to be a fool and think I can cancel Prabhupada's strategy and say, well, that's not really so important anymore. Because, in other words, I'm not going to betray Prabhupada in the sense of being nice and contemporary. So let's talk about that. I believe, and I'm really trying to be very nice in saying this, so I hope I'll try my best to be nice about it. But I think there are two fundamental philosophical misunderstandings that virtually pervade the Hare Krishna movement and are making it difficult to actually rebuild Prabhupada's Western mission. I also want to make it clear that this is not a criticism of any individual. It's not even a criticism of ISKCON. I think as a historian, I understand that things can kind of go a certain way, so there's no question of blaming anyone. But I think that all of us should really take note of these things. So now I'll try to persuade you that I'm right, which is basically what I do all day, every day. Try to persuade people I'm right. But anyway, so I'll cover these points now. Um, First of all, categories. There is an indirect and a direct way to spread Krishna consciousness. Those are terms I'm introducing. Indirect means, let's say direct. Direct means the recipients of prasadam, of, let's say, the sound of Harinam or of books. The recipients consciously accept those gifts. They're aware of what's happening and they accept prasadam, they accept Harinam, they accept books consciously. I call that direct preaching. Indirect preaching is when you give prasadam, Harinam, or books in situations where the recipients do not directly understand what they're getting. They're not directly conscious of the spiritual significance of what they're receiving. Now, there's a term in ISKCON, agyata sukriti, unknown good deed, which some people have, I believe, well, some people have taken to mean that if you do Harinam, it's totally irrelevant whether the people know what Harinam is or get a book or prasadam. It's all irrelevant. So therefore, don't waste time trying to explain first. Just give them these things, and the benefit is complete. It's complete, immediate benefit, regardless of their ignorance of what's actually happening. Now, there's a problem with that understanding, a very serious problem, namely that it directly contradicts Krishna's own teaching. Actually, I won't say directly contradicts. That's it, because what I'm going to say ultimately is there's a paradox. A paradox means an apparent contradiction. It's ultimately not really a contradiction, but on the surface it is. So I'm going to read the verse in the Gita where Krishna apparently contradicts Agyata Sukriti. It's the last verse of chapter 17 of the Bhagavad Gita, 17:28, where Krishna says, Ashadhaya hutam dattam tapastaptam kritam chajat asariti uchate parta natcha tat pratyanoiha. I'm going to read Prabhupada's translation of that verse because it's very literal. Anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, in other words, without really believing in what you're doing, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless. It's useless, both in this life and the next. And so Agyata Sukriti, by definition, means people do not have faith in the activity. Otherwise, it wouldn't be Agyata. And Prabhupada says, and Krishna says, and those are the supreme authorities, that it's useless. So, if nothing else, this should get you thinking. And as I said, I will try to persuade you, this is not a contradiction, it's a paradox, but you have to understand what the paradox is. And so let me go on with that. Um, so, first of all, one can quote in defense of Agyata Sukriti, one can quote many verses, the Ajamila story and other verses. Actually, the first time this comes out that someone may not really understand perfectly, but there's benefit, is in the first canto, first chapter, text 14, which says, Apanat Sangshiting Gorang Janama Vivashogranam, that even if someone just spontaneously or almost involuntarily chants the holy name, Krishna's name, then and that person is fallen in a very terrible material situation, they may immediately be liberated. Now, what you find in this verse, if we look carefully at the Sanskrit, and you find the same thing in the Ajamila story, by the way, is that the verb being used, in this case, in the first canto, vimucheta, which does not mean the person is liberated. It means the person may be liberated, and may not. And we find the same, this is called the optative form of the verb in Sanskrit. The indicative would be is liberated. The optative would be may be liberated, can be liberated, and so on. We find this exact form of the verb in the Ajamila story, where it said "dehed edho jitanala," that just as the person may be liberated, just as fire may be liberated the way fire burns fuel, may be liberated in the Ajamila story. Uh, or Vivasha, and so on. So in the case of a Jamila, it's actually a case of Bhagavad Gita 240. Nehapi kramanashosti. There's no loss or diminution. As Prabhupada so brilliantly put it, you have a spiritual bank account. A Jamila consciously, voluntarily practiced bhakti yoga and became an advanced devotee. Then he fell into illusion. But his progress was still in his spiritual bank account, and therefore he was saved. So uh, now there's another case where, let's say, you can hear Harinam Sankirtan, you can eat prasadam, you can get a book, and there really is great benefit. That is described in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. And so I'm going to read the two verses where Krishna explains what to me is the real powerful agyata sukriti, unknown good deed. That's in Bhagavad Gita, verses 643 and 644. First, I'm going to say one thing. How you can say, well, if agyata sukriti, if this, just going out and chanting to people that know nothing about it, giving out prasadam, if it's not so powerful, how did ISKCON grow so fast? How can you explain the growth of ISKCON so powerfully when Prabhupada was here? And there is an explanation. There are two reasons that explain it. And those two reasons are, number one, at that time when Prabhupada came, Krishna created this unique, unprecedented situation in the Western world where youth had an extraordinary fascination with spiritual India. They were joining all kinds of movements, yogis, swamis. In other words, ISKCON caught a wave. It wasn't just an ISKCON wave, as you might mistakenly think if you watch Hare Krishna movies. It wasn't just an ISKCON wave. There were all kinds of gurus, and practically almost all of them really bogus, and practically almost every last one of them, at least the famous ones, fell down with women. Prabhupada was a real thing. Prabhupada was pure and even materially much smarter. But it was a wave. ISKCON caught the wave. It didn't create the wave. And so all kinds of people joined, and then and how many of those people are still active in Krishna consciousness? Very few, small minority. And Krishna himself says that four kinds of people approach me. The second reason is that Prabhupada directly states that Krishna set it up. Krishna actually sent past life devotees all over the world, as Prabhupada said, just waiting for the Sankirtan party to come and pick them up. Now, I'll read a quote from Prabhupada where he says that one of the main reasons the movement grew so quickly, of course, the first reason was because every movement with an Indian guru was growing quickly. If the guru wasn't a complete fool and had a little bit going for him, every one of those movements grew quickly. And now let me read Prabhupada's quote for the second reason. Oh, yes. Therefore, Krishna has brought Western devotees here in Mayapur. This is 1977 in Mayapur. Previously, they were advanced. Previously, in other words, before this life, previously they were advanced. It wasn't, and All of you, you are the Western devotees. In those days, there were a few Indian devotees. All of you, you are simply born because this mission was to be started. Just like in Yadu Vangsha, Krishna ordered all the devotee demigods to take birth there and help me. So just like the Yadus, Krishna ordered all the devotee demigods to take birth and help me. Similarly, you were born in Europe and America to help this movement. You were born in Europe and America to help this movement. Otherwise, you were devotees in your past life. So, in other words, there was never a time, and not to speak of people from a Hindu background, my God, I mean, they're immersed in it. In other words, there was never a time in ISKCON history where the movement grew significantly simply because of a Gyata Sukriti, where people actually had no background, had no previous knowledge. There never was a time in ISKCON history when simply a Gyata Sukriti by itself made the movement successful. I think that's a very important point. And actually, Krishna himself confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita. So now I'm going to read two verses from the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna confirms what Prabhupada said. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 43 and 44. 43. Tatra tang buddhi sang yogam labate porvadehikam. These are the verses where Arjuna asked, Ayati Shatayopeto, what happens to a sincere, faithful person who falls down from the process, doesn't complete the spiritual path? And Krishna says that person then gets this really fantastic birth in the next life, and then they come back to this world and they take birth in a favorable situation. And then Krishna says, and this is really key, he says, Tatra, in that situation, Tang Buddhi Sangyogam, Labate Porvadehikam. The devotee regains their strong connection, Sangyogam, strong connection with Krishna conscious philosophy. In other words, it didn't just sound right to you when you read one of Prabhupada's books, or it didn't just make sense to you when someone preached to you. It's because you already knew this. That's the point. And that's what Krishna says. He says it is Buddhi Sanyogam, a strong connection with Buddhi, spiritual understanding, which is Purva Dehikam, from your previous body. I don't know how it could be more clear. It is from your previous body. It's not that you knew nothing about it, you had no background, no interest, and you just walk by Harinam and boom. That's not what Krishna is saying here. Purva Dehikam. And we still have the word Purva or Purva in English. It's previous, which is directly from Sanskrit, previous. Previo in Spanish. So yetate cha tato bhuyak, and this devotee again endeavors further, sangsit how, for the full perfection, Kurunanda. And then Krishna says, and this is very powerful, 644, Purvabhyasena. It is by your previous practice in a previous life. Abhyasa in the Gita, whenever you see it, it means sadhana. Krishna doesn't use the word sadhana. He uses the word abhyasa. So purvabhyasa means purva sadhana in Sanskrit. It's by your previous practice of Krishna consciousness. And then he says, Tainaiva. Excuse me. Tainaiva means by that alone. By your previous practice in a previous life, by that alone. Hriyate Yavashopi said, you are taken involuntarily, avasha, sort of spontaneously. Now, what's very interesting about this word avasha, which I hope you've noticed, I'm joking, because is that it's exactly the same word that's often used in the Ajamila story to explain why, first of all, why Ajamila named his kid Narayan. He could have named it like, Seymour or Billy or something. Why did he name his kid Narayan? Because he was a devotee. And if you read the Sanskrit of the Ajamila story, you'll find the word avasha. Even if one just avasha, chants the holy name. But now we find in the Gita, avasha means spontaneously because of previous Krishna consciousness. So jigyasurapi yogasya sabda brahmati. So that person again wants to learn about Krishna. So another in a little more time, I want to talk about the term causeless mercy, which is a wonderful concept and is almost universally misunderstood. Um, Causeless mercy. And it's used as a justification to say people, don't have to know about anything. We don't have to explain it to them. It's just causeless mercy. First of all, the term causeless mercy in Veda base occurs over 3,200 times. So to put it mildly, this is a real big term in the Hare Krishna movement. And it's a term which we really can't afford to misunderstand. If we misunderstand one of the basic terms in the Hare Krishna movement, we're going to have trouble. Trouble. So, what it really means, the easiest way to show you what it actually means, it doesn't mean causeless, doesn't mean the recipient. It doesn't mean that there's no reason for this person to get the mercy. That's not what it means. Causeless is referring not to the recipient, but to the giver, the teacher. And what it means is, just as we've seen so many gurus, bogus gurus, as we affectionately call them, they do. They're vain. They want to be famous. All the three things Lord Chaitanya said. They want money. They, by their behavior, they obviously want sex, and they want followers. And so causeless mercy means the person giving the mercy, not the person receiving the mercy, has no selfish desire. And the proof of this is right in the Shikshastaka prayers, where Lord Chaitanya famously says, Na dhanang na janang na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye. Mama janmani janmani shure bhavatad bhakti ahaituki. The word ahaituki is the word in Shastra for causeless. That's the word. Whenever we're talking about causeless devotion, anything, that's the word, because hetu in Sanskrit means a cause, but also a psychological cause, which means a motive. That's the Sanskrit word for motive, hetu. And so haituka means something in which you have a selfish motive. And if you don't have a selfish motive, it's ahaituka. And if it's a feminine word like bhakti, and you're trying to say bhakti without a selfish motive, the word is a haituki, which is the feminine form of the word. So, as Lord Chaitanya points out, causeless mercy doesn't mean people with zero qualifications, you just show up and say Hare Krishna and then they're liberated. It means that the preacher, if we're still allowed to use that word, a little politically incorrect nowadays, but I still like it. So it means the preacher has no selfish motive. And anyway, there's many verses in the CC, Haituki Bhakti, Prabhupada translates unmotivated devotional service, 224, 146, 224, 167. Haituki Bhakti, Prabhupada translates causeless devotional service, no motive. Then Lord Chaitanya, Nadanam. Now, if we say that people without qualification still get the mercy, there's one little problem. It contradicts a lot of Krishna's teachings. If people without qualification just get zapped into devotional service, you have to give up Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. Personally, I don't think I will. I think I'll stick with the real literal meaning of words and stick with the Bhagavad Gita. So here are some, I'll just give you a short list of Krishna's own statements that would be untrue if there was really such a thing as unqualified people getting so-called causeless mercy and just becoming devotees. Krishna says, Jai Jata Mam Prapadyante. Exactly. As people approach me, I reciprocate with them. I precisely reciprocate with people. So if someone had no interest in approaching Krishna and got all this mercy, Krishna's statement would be false. Krishna says, uh, Samohang, Samohang, Sarvabhuteshu. I'm equal to everyone. So someone walks by the Harinam party and gets the mercy, but that person was unqualified. What about the unqualified person that just took another street? These two people are exactly with the same qualification. One goes to hell, one goes to the spiritual world. That doesn't sound like being equal to everyone to me. Krishna says, Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu. You have to be, then they say, well, the guru is more merciful. Technically, that's what I call ecstatic utterance. In other words, it's an expression of ecstasy. It's not literally true. Krishna is infinitely merciful, and you can't say infinite plus one. There's no such thing. And you could say, well, what about the devotees? They just blindly give the mercy to everyone. Maybe. No, no, they blindly offer it to everyone. Because Krishna says that you cannot achieve advanced devotional service unless you are samak sarveshu bhuteshu, equal to all creatures. So if you favor one over the other for no good reason, then you're again not following what Krishna said. Also in the Bhagavad Gita, Pandita Samadarshana, the wise people see everyone equally, even animals. And then Atmopamyena Sarvatra. Krishna defines yoga. The definition of spiritual practice is samatvam, even equality, in the sense that you atmopamyena sarvatra, everywhere you look, you have equal empathy for every living being. Equal empathy is what actually it means in Sanskrit. Atmopamyena sarvatra. So therefore, in other words, I think we have to avoid trying to be very positive here and upbeat, as serious. My handlers are watching me, so we have to be. um, we have to be. We are equal to everyone, which means we don't just preach to people that take hatha yoga classes, for example. Chapman University, a respected university in Southern California, did a study to see who takes yoga classes in North America. First of all, 80%, 80% women. I mean, just like we wouldn't just focus on groups that are 80% men, right? That'd be male. I mean, why would we do that? So it's 80% women. And the first five or six reasons they asked, like, why are you doing this, had absolutely nothing to do with philosophy. It had absolutely nothing to do with spirituality. It was about having a sexy body. It was about losing weight. It was about being more athletic. Nothing remotely connected with spirituality or philosophy made the top five or six motives. So somehow or other, I suggest that we not imagine that the best candidates for advanced theology are women trying to improve their bodies. I mean, the idea that these are actually the best candidates for advanced philosophy and theology, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I mean, anyway. So then just to wrap up here, actually, so I don't think we should bet the family farm in ISKCON on Agyata Sukriti. I don't think we should pin all our hopes on people trying to improve their bodies and lose weight and be sexier. I think that we actually have to approach everyone and try to make everyone Krishna conscious. And maybe, uh, well, I mean, I have a lot of other points, but I'll stop there for now. Those are just trying to stay roughly within the parameters of competition. So, do we are we going to take any questions or not?
Can you look at the questions I sent you privately on the chat, please, according to your talk?
That is Sarvam on WhatsApp. Where did you?
On Zoom.
Oh, in the chat.
On Zoom.
The Zoom chat, right? Okay, let's see. Okay. Uh, when Lord Krishna encouraged Arjuna to fight, he also mentioned that Arjuna should take the credit for the victory. That is a great question because I was going to make a point, but then I thought, no, I won't do it. I don't want to get in trouble, but I will make it now because I just take that as Krishna telling me, and that is, I think uh, my disciples are kind of cringing now. Oh my God, what's he going to say? Don't ruin it. No, but actually, I'll make this point positively, and that is that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, we must be moderate in dealing with our human needs. Do not eat too much or too little. Do not sleep too much or too little. And Krishna even says, if you just try to fast, you won't actually purify your desire. The way we purify our material desires in bhakti yoga is called yukta vairagya. We engage these things in spiritual service. That's why Prabhupada cooked all these delicious feasts, right? Because he didn't tell people just eat, follow the six Goswamis and eat a few old burnt grains of rice every day. He cooked these magnificent feasts. We have an unavoidable, completely natural human need to have some degree of recognition. That's why, I mean, that's one of the questions. In ISKCON, someone comes to the movement but isn't treated properly and they go away. Our response to that is not, well, if you were really a sincere devotee, why would you need to be treated properly? That's just not the way we respond to it. That would be a kind of a very inhuman response. Well, what to speak about people who actually take responsibility? That's why it's so hard to find leaders, because it is literally a thankless task. I have personal experience of visiting communities where I was a GBC and under my whatever service, the number of devotees, let's say in an ISKCON farm, went from 3 to 300 in a few years. We worked very hard. Brahmatirtha also helped a lot. When I visit that place now and walk around, I'm basically nobody. Younger devotees have no idea what my name is. Like, oh, are you in the Hare Krishna movement? Any civilized society, for example, I always give this example just because it really struck me and it's very illustrative. One of the most beautiful college campuses in America is University of Virginia, and they built this really magnificent law school. It's one of the top law schools in the country, and beautiful, beautiful little law campus. And so when you walk in the main building, they have this entrance entrance room, which is this magnificent room. And so all around, it's sort of a rotunda, following Jefferson's architecture. And so all the way around, they have these beautiful paintings of all the past presidents of the law school. If you become a leader, let's say you become the mayor of a town or the governor of a state, if you become the leader of, for God's sake, the Masons, or become the leader of some charity group or whatever, you know that you will go down in history. You know that you will be remembered. And it would be foolish to say that that is not a powerful motivator. And it doesn't mean the person that's motivated is just acting selfishly. It means that in exchange for all the sacrifice they're making, they're getting some reciprocation. Even Krishna, for God's sake, reciprocates. And there's nothing quite as painful as, if you've experienced this, as to really give your life, give your heart, try very hard to serve. And at the end, you're nobody. You're just a bum. You're just some person, you'll be forgotten. And if you are remembered, it'll probably be for all the things you did wrong. Who in their right mind is going to want to make the sacrifice to be a leader under those conditions? being a leader in ISKCON, it's not prestigious. There's no status. It just means, okay, you okay, you're the one that has to do all this thankless service for now. Just to give one example, I don't want to embarrass her, but Suniti, uh, who is the administrative director, right, of the RGB. I'm old school. I was trained by Prabhupada, and I think I just sort of have a normal human understanding of these things. When I heard that Suniti was in that position, I felt very, very proud of her. I felt very proud of her, and it really increased. I already liked her a lot, but it really increased my respect for her, my appreciation. Same thing for Prabhupada Priya, who's not here right now, but she also. So and because to me, when I heard that this talk was going to be sort of sponsored by the North American RGB, I felt, well, that's an honor. Why? Because I grew up in a culture, both in the material world and in ISKCON, where there is real respect for authority. And authority is always imperfect. And some leaders have been actually walking train wrecks. I mean, some people should be remembered only in infamy, to quote Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But I would say the vast majority of ISKCON leaders, however competent they were, have served honorably. And to be honest, if you know that if I accept this position as temple president, if I accept this position as a GBC or regional secretary, it is a great honor. There's a certain prestige attached to it. And so obviously my motive can't simply be the prestige because Lord Chaitanya said, Najana, we don't want that. However, how can you, if you're really hungry, how can you not enjoy a delicious Hare Krishna feast? You'd be a fool. I mean, even Prabhupada really knew when things were cooked right or not. And so it doesn't mean you're not a real devotee, you have selfish motives because you actually enjoy the feast. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you because someone that actually knows how to sing and play musical instruments is singing and playing the musical instruments, as opposed to someone who's making it a mahatapasya just to stay in the kirtan. So in the same way, honoring people, respecting them. As we know, take the GBC. I mean, I can't say it's like setting new standards for the world in terms of incredibly efficient administration. But I do know that they're, you know, almost all of them very, very sincere devotees that are really trying their best, that are giving up all kinds of personal pleasures and all kinds of personal whatever, giving up their time, sometimes not giving as much time to their own families as they would like because they're serving. And that has to be honored. So if we want leaders in ISKCON, I think it would help a lot if we start honoring and respecting those who make that sacrifice. And if you do, I have no doubt you're going to see a lot more people willing to accept that responsibility when it's not literally a thankless task. And the only thing that's certain about your serving is that you will be absolutely forgotten in the very near future, and no one will give a damn about all the sacrifices you made. So if we change our attitude, and of course, it's very interesting. Just to give one example, Vietnam War. When I was an incredibly self-righteous, fatuous, puffed up fool in Berkeley during when I was a young guy. And I've read some of my old essays from that time, and they're just like, I'm just cringing to see how self-righteous and foolish I was. But I thought I was a genius. I thought I was incredibly brilliant, but I was actually, I was incredibly foolish. But anyway, but what was the result of that? that everyone suddenly started to bash Vietnam, that everyone's against Vietnam War, and the veterans came home after literally some of them crippled, blinded, or just dead. Families that lost their sons, their brothers. And all these people came home after making these horrible sacrifices, and they were just like insulted. They were insulted. They were shunned. They were avoided. And then suddenly, I mean, at a certain point, I remember very well in American history, there was like this national recognition that, oh my God, this was horrible what we did to these people. These people were just innocent young guys who thought they were serving a noble cause. And they were just, not only were they traumatized and sometimes mutilated or killed in action, but then they came back to absolute ingratitude and just insults. And so there was this whole national reckoning, and everyone was just, there was this sort of like this national powerful feeling of guilt, and that something horrible had been done, and the attitude completely changed. And you can see it. I mean, I don't want to go into, I mean, the attitude completely changed, and everyone was honoring them and going out of their way. And that's what they always say nowadays. Thank you for your service. They didn't say that before. So I'm not saying ISKCON is as bad as that, but I am saying that I think the amount of recognition, honor, appreciation, gratitude given to ISKCON leaders is way, way below a healthy, proper level. And if that has changed, I think you'll find it's like, try opening a Hare Krishna temple where you don't feed anyone, not even the people that live there. Like you're hungry, go out in the street, collect something, go buy a bag of potato chips. Try spreading the movement where we don't satisfy people's basic human needs. There's a human need when you make sacrifice, whether for your children or or for your friends or for anyone. If there's no gratitude, no recognition, you think, I'm not going to do that again. So that's the real problem, I think, with finding leaders, frankly. And so if we change the culture, hey, there's Leslie. So Leslie and Dana are the leaders of Krishna West in Salem, Oregon. They're holding down Oregon and just sort of mopping up the last few Oregonians that haven't surrendered to Krishna West. So, so because they've taken that responsibility, I respect that. They've earned a special respect from me because they're taking that, because they're doing that. So that I was very proud of Marisha when she became responsible for education in Southern Europe. So I'm going to go around the room. So many people. El mejor de los cubanitos. So I personally, because I was trained by Prabhupada and because Bhakti Yoga's almost civilized me, and after all these years, then even my own disciples or other people, it's just I honor those people who have the ability and the sense of self-sacrifice and the sincerity to take responsibility in Prabhupada's mission. So I think that's a really important point if we want to kind of get things going. So anything else? Last chance.
My second question, which is also
Oh,
on the
Sarvama, as usual, is double dipping. Let's see.
actually is related to the second part of your answer, and
Okay.
because
Let me read that.
I only sent it to you, so please read it out loud first.
If there are four kinds of people that join, but apparently only the inquisitive about the absolute truth stay for the long run, how can we find selectively those candidates and help them make the transition to practice Krishna consciousness? Wouldn't a proper selective recruiting program save us the trouble of ending up with temps, temporary helpers, and in the long term would do more harm? Well, I don't know if they do more harm than good. They wash a few pots before they leave. Bad leaders, ambitious individuals who become either bureaucrats or tyrants. Well, Saratma, tell us what you really think. So, so Sarvam is intelligent. Actually, I did want to talk about that also. There was something about Prabhupada which was powerful and necessary, which we don't see so much nowadays. And that is, he was really into sociology. And by sociology, I mean the Varna system. Krishna, of course, obviously, Varnashram is a complete system, but in the Gita, interestingly, Krishna explicitly mentions Chaturvarnyam, the Varnas. And Prabhupada was extremely class conscious. I won't say caste conscious because it has a sort of a derogatory sense. Prabhupada perfectly embodied Krishna's teachings because, on the one hand, he was equal to everyone, he was respectful to everyone, he sincerely wanted to help everyone. At the same time, he was very clear on hierarchy. If you only have hierarchy and don't understand the equality, then you become an oppressive leader, an abusive, oppressive leader. If you have no sense of the equality of all souls, and that goes for gurus too. On the other hand, if you only see equality and not hierarchy, you're dysfunctional. You can't organize a functional society. And so Prabhupada would make the kind of statements we don't make anymore, but he would make them. Like, for example, so many Shudras are coming. It doesn't mean that Krishna loves Brahmanas more than Shudras. It's dysfunctional. It doesn't mean we turn away Shudras. It means that unless we attract the higher classes, ISKCON cannot flourish as a society. And that's why if you look at all the letters that Prabhupada wrote before coming to America, and when he was still alone in New York, who was he writing to? The leaders of society. He was writing to the leaders of society and telling them, if you do this, others will follow. Others will follow. And so leaders doesn't mean, oh, I should mention here to Jake, actually. Yeah, this is not a rant against workers, because actually, even because I know he organizes working class. So, but it means because anyone can have any kind of job, and when they become Krishna conscious, they can do amazing things. So this is not caste consciousness in the negative sense of the word. It means that people come, and if they are really willing to take responsibility and really willing to do something. I mean, think of what Prabhupada said. We would never say things like this. I think it's very interesting not only to look at the things that Prabhupada says and we say, it's perhaps especially interesting to see the things that Prabhupada often said that we would never say. And I'll give you a little taste of that. Here, let's see, where is it? Oh, there it is. Prabhupada said, think of these sayings, which no one really talks about or thinks about. We don't just want many stars, we want a moon. We have to boil the milk. We want the mass, not the class. Prabhupada he was brilliant. He was an expert. You could say he understood sociology. He understood that if you simply keep pulling in people who really can't do much for the movement, it's just, you're not going to go anywhere.
Did you mean to say the class, not the mass? Because he said it backwards, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We want the class, not the mass. Yes. So the qualification to be a valuable member of ISKCON is not that you're really into Hatha Yoga. The qualification is you're willing to take responsibility. Some people may have all kinds of academic degrees, but they're useless. So it's not just about externals. It's about really willing to roll up your sleeves. Therefore, I think the target group, if there is one, for preaching Krishna consciousness is not people just trying to have sexier bodies or lose weight. It's people that care about the world. When I joined the movement, there was this whole mass thing, civil rights movement, anti-Vietnam movement, this movement, that movement. There still are people like that. So rather than targeting people because they're into their bodies, why not target people because they care about the world, because they want to help us, they want to take responsibility to spread this movement? Are we looking for those people? I don't know how we're looking for them in an organized way. Those are the people Prabhupada was looking for. So anyway, I think I'm just at the edge here where I'm still politically correct. So
Is there a way? Is there an organized way to look for those people?
yeah, go to places where people like that hang out. Like, for example, animal rights groups, environmental action groups, social justice groups who desperately need our philosophy because they're not so effective. Why aren't they so effective? As we've just seen in the last uh, presidential election, they do things like what's the main issue you're voting on, and saving the earth is like way down at the bottom. Saving the earth is near the bottom. And yet there are people who are really passionately, they care about the earth. They want to make the world a better place. That's one of the reasons ISKCON spread. Prabhupada attracted a lot of people who were already committed to changing the world. We were just trying to do it in a stupid way. And then Prabhupada told us the intelligent way to do it. ISKCON has virtually no presence, almost no presence whatsoever among all the millions of people who are actually trying to make the world a better place and just lack the knowledge. But we're all over the place when it comes to people. Anyway, I'll be nice. So, actually, Sunita, some of my disciples, they should come to all my programs, just kind of look at me, make eye contact, and then my behavior will definitely improve.
I'll just
Okay,
raise my hand once in a while as a reminder. Hey, I'm here.
yes.
There's actually a really nice question here from
Yes,
Reddy.
my lovely assistant Raman Reddy, I'm very grateful for all her service. She helped put together all the invitations and helped organize.
Is she here now? Is she
Well,
here?
she's here. She's here. Raman Reddy,
Where's Raman?
Hi, Krishna. I'm here.
stand up.
Where's Raman? Oh, there you are. Hey, Raman.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
Raman
This
Reddy
is my
had a
daughter
question
here.
for you.
Hi. Hare
Hey,
Krishna.
what's her name? What's the daughter's name?
Leela.
Hey, Leela, how old are you?
I am 11.
Hey, believe it or not, I was once 11. But that was in the 1800s. So, hey, Leela, we need you. You're a very good mother, and hopefully you'll also do very valuable service for Krishna.
Hopefully, right now I'm just trying to get her to open jam. She's trying to get me to open a jar of jam, so just
Well, that's also very important. When you need jam, you need jam.
Jane. I want to point out Ramanati had put a question in the chat, so I'll read it out loud, Ramanati,
Yeah,
so you
please,
can open a jar of jam. She asked if there are any current and upcoming key waves or trends that you see in the Western world that ISKCON would be wise to catch.
Yes, good question. Very good question. First of all, a new wave which caught everyone by surprise is that young men are going back to religion. And of course, because of the excesses of the woke movement, young men were just kind of like toxic, right? I mean, especially if you're white. I mean, it's really a great thing to have the whole society telling you you're poisonous. That does wonders for your self-esteem. And so, for example, the suicide rate among men is 3 times what it is among women. Women are excelling in the universities, men are failing at much higher rates. There's much more depression. And so, because basically they've just been trashed by the woke society. And so, therefore, A lot of them are going back to religion. And also there's a huge movement now, even in the universities, like, okay, we got to go back to the guys. We got to be nice to the guys, encourage the guys. So there's a big movement everywhere, even at the woke universities. But so yes, young men. And let's see, what other big trends? Yeah, because we have a particular individual in the White House now. I'm not going to get into that, but it's it's almost like marginally human. So that's kind of galvanized a lot of people that want to make the world better, and even people, frankly, that voted for him because they're seeing how he's just literally rolling back every environmental protection. I mean, environmentally, we're being taken back 50 years, and not to speak of other things. So, um, therefore, yeah, people are desperate for leadership because we are completely in favor. Just to give you one example of Vaishnav environmentalism, which really struck me. When I was doing my PhD at Harvard, I read this book. It's called Nigama literature, Agama. It's sort of a certain genre of Vaishnav literature. A lot of it in South India, maybe like 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. And so it described the process of building a temple for Vishnu. And this is what really struck me. If you're going to build a temple for Vishnu, obviously you first have to level the ground, right? And that's what you do when you're building. You have to have a level lot. And in those days, they didn't use tractors for some strange reason. Instead, they would actually have a plow and they would level the land to build something on. And so, because it's for Vishnu, you can't use a plow that's already been used for other things. You have to make a new plow. To make a new plow, you have to cut a tree down. And here's the interesting part. When you're going to cut a tree down, you have to acknowledge sincerely that you are destroying, not only killing a tree, but you are seriously disrupting a community, because trees they anchor communities, whether it's insects or squirrels or birds. Trees give shade. The trees produce fruit and fruits. They feed creatures. So in so many ways, trees are actually the center of communities. And when you cut the tree down, you are basically, completely disrupting a community. You have to apologize for that. You have to acknowledge what you're doing, apologize to that community, and pray for their eternal welfare. And so obviously, if you have to do that every time, that's going to really discourage like clear-cut, farming where you just go down, cut a forest down to print, paper for pornography, and stupid advertising where you're just cheating people. And so yeah, I mean, Vedic culture is super environmentally conscious. In fact, the sages, if you read the Bhagavatam, the sages were obviously nature lovers, which I didn't understand when I was first reading Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita and first visiting the old LA temple in Los Angeles Boulevard, because we were coming back from my last sort of real family vacation. We went up to the mountains just east of Los Angeles. There's these high mountains. They go up like 5, 6, 7,000 feet. And there's lakes up there, Lake Arrowhead, Big. But anyway, so I took a family vacation. I was actually already reading Prabhupada's Gita, and we were driving back. And because Southern California is very dry, it doesn't have a lot of forest, especially at the lower elevations. And so as we were driving down from thousands of feet up, you had these like spectacular views of Southern California, because you're thousands of feet up. There's no trees in the way, and you could just see everything. And so, everyone in my family, we were in the car, they were like oohing and ahhing, wow, look at that, look at that. Meanwhile, I was in the back seat with the bridge Bhagavad Gita as it is, and I was saying, well, technically that's the inferior energy of Krishna, which was kind of a stupid thing to say, but I was just starting. But my point here is that actually in the Bhagavatam, the sages are nature lovers, because more often than not, almost always, where do they put their ashrams? They put them always on the side of a river for cleanliness and purity and all that. Also, it's described where there are beautiful fruit trees, flower trees, songbirds. And often there's a waterfall nearby where the cool spray is brought by the wind and refreshes them. And so and it goes on and on. I remember when I was translating the Bhagavatam, sometimes it would go on for like 20 different varieties of trees. I mean, it's just very interesting. So the people, these sages, they were nature lovers. They were, they were horticulturists. They were. It's very interesting. And there was a whole group called the Vaikanas. When you took Vanaprastha, by the way, Vanaprastha, you didn't go off into the wilderness alone. There were actually communities which were Vanaprastha communities, like retirement areas in the forest. And there were even groups like the Vaikanasas. Who were mentioned in the Veda and mentioned in the Bhagavatam, who I did my dissertation on them. But anyway, so they were retirement specialists. And they would tell you, for example, hey, don't eat the leaves of that tree, they're poisonous. These leaves are edible. And you have to light a fire a certain way, put a certain herb in it, and that way that the carnivorous animals won't come around to fire. So and they would teach them and preach to them, and so there were Vanaprastha communities, retirement communities, but they were in beautiful places. So we have everything to say about environmentalism. We have everything to say about social justice. In fact, here's one point: that the social justice warriors are actually going backwards, because the whole cause of racism, the cause of, I don't know, just any type of tribalism, whether it's based on race or ethnicity, ageism. Of course, my big issue now. Just kidding. That was a joke. But the whole basis of all these things is the bodily concept of life. When people are like animals, they want to enjoy like animals, they identify with their bodies. Good luck trying to get an animal to be ethical. Just try. Let me know how it goes for you. And so, therefore, because people are like animals in their habits now and their bodily identification, so the leftist solution is become even more animalistic. In other words, you have to fortify, you have to intensify your identification with your body. So that, for example, a black person that votes Republican is not really a black person, like a traitor. In other words, if you have an individual identity, if you just see yourself as an individual soul or just an individual person, and you just want to be yourself, you're a traitor. You have to be in a group identity. You have to identify with your body, and your bodily identification comes first. So they're making things worse. They're balkanizing humanity. Whereas Krishna consciousness lifts people above the bodily concept of life. It lifts everyone up to a dignified, sacred place, sacred identity, where everyone is equal. You don't try to bash the hierarchy, you lift people above it. So everyone respects everyone else. So they're actually making things worse. Even if they have some good intentions, they're making things worse, as we see now. So we have everything to say about social justice. We have everything to say about the environment. We have everything to say about peace on earth. And so the real problem is not that we have all these loser politicians. That's not the problem. The problem is, where are the devotees? Why aren't the devotees show up? Well, they're too busy. They're often, yoga studios, helping people to lose weight and, have better bodies. The Vaishnavas are MIA, missing in action. Uh-oh. Okay, I'll stop. I really need a handler. Okay, so on a more positive, friendly note. So anyway, that was okay. Just one little rant there. Now, but sometimes you need some strong medicine. So therefore, that's what we need to do. We need to go out and look for people that care about the world, that want to change the world, and just redirect them, refocus them. instead of going to people that seriously have very little interest in changing the world. And then you see you've doubled your job, because you not only have to convince them about Krishna, but then you have to convince them to care about the world and to work for the world and not just your body. And that's very hard. I've tried, and it's not easy. It's not easy to convince people to be unselfish, to care about the world, to work for the world. It's twice the work, because when Prabhupada found us, or we found Prabhupada, we already were committed to changing the world. We just had to stop trying to do it in such a stupid way and actually do it in the intelligent way. That's, I think, what we need to do. Find the people that care about the world. Some of them will be terrible atheistic Marxists, but a significant number of them will listen to us. And even some of the terrible atheistic Marxists will listen to us. That's a whole other lecture on Marxism. I won't go there now. So yes, I think we need to recalibrate. It's not about people trying to get sexy bodies or lose weight. It's about people trying to change the world.
Wonderful. Thank you. We're just a little bit over time, but there's still a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know
Okay, well, I need the money, so let's go ahead with the questions. Hey,
Okay.
Balabhadra, where's Balabhadra, my old buddy? See, Balabhadra, are you there? Wave.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, so my base Louis Prabhupada.
Hey, Balabhadra.
It's your Lou Rawls Bhattacharya.
Balabhadraji and I are old friends. Okay, so he says, Haribol, so how do we effectively spread Krishna consciousness in the present day if Agyata Sukriti is not the most effective? Please give some specific examples that we all can consider applying to our strategy for continuing preaching. Thank you. Balabhadra is a distinguished preacher. So, you know the old saying, if everything else fails, read the directions. And so Prabhupada urged us to go out and boldly, but nicely. I mean, don't follow my example. I'm a little polemical. But Prabhupada urged us to go out and very strongly teach Krishna consciousness. It works. It's funny. I remember that, Listerine, the bad breath thing, Listerine. There was a time, this is back, 20, 30 years ago, and people actually watched television. I mean, like, so a show was only on at this time. And so they had primetime advertising. And so Listerine did this marketing survey and realized everyone bought Listerine and no one used it. So no one bought it again. And that was their problem. So they had this whole primetime ad campaign where they had this like real deep British voice saying, it's in your medicine cabinet, use it. And so it just kind of reminds me of that. So, I mean, we all know that Prabhupada was a bold preacher. Everyone, the way I put it, every one of us has to find our Jaladuta. It's not that that's just a great story. It is a great story, but, our lives are different. And I don't mean you have to have a heart attack or something. But we all have to find our Jaladuta. That's what Prabhupada did for us. Are we reciprocating with Prabhupada? Are we doing the same for Prabhupada? Are we taking Prabhupada, for God's sake, was an old, he was already advanced age. His health wasn't that great. He took so much trouble. He traveled around the world when all his doctors told him, you can't do that. Why? To save us. So how are we reciprocating Prabhupada's sacrifice? How are we also finding our Jaladuta? How are we making the kinds of unselfish decisions that Prabhupada made to save us? There's something, I mean, we can't just be a movement that's just sedate. And like, we have to, Prabhupada's spirit, if you want to get a lot of Prabhupada's mercy, be like Prabhupada. Obviously, we're not at his level, but we can be like him. We can emulate him, not imitate, but emulate. And that means all of us need to start making some unselfish decisions about our life. And I certainly include myself in that. That's the way it was when Prabhupada was here. It was really about service. We made decisions because it was better for service. I remember, I think one of the last times I did that was, many years ago, but I remember I was in Santa Barbara. I took all my classes at Harvard, and then I was at the stage where I had to start working on my dissertation. And so, because in Boston it's kind of cold, so Cambridge, so I went back to California. I'm like a homing pigeon, always somehow end up back there. And then I rented this beautiful house. Sarvama, you must have been around in Santa Barbara. You remember the house in Santa Barbara? It was a nice house. You walk out the door and you see these huge mountains like right there. And you just go up to up to little what Tamal Krishna, when he stayed with me for a month, we called Gayatri Point. You see the ocean, you see, everything. It's very one of the most beautiful places in the country. And the weather is always good. So Ram was there for decades. And so and I was in Santa Barbara, and it was in December. And I just felt in my heart, actually, if I really want to get this PhD as fast as possible, I should go back to Harvard for a while. And it was December, like, right. So I'll arrive in the Boston area in January, right. And there's like a California boy. So, but I did. I went back to Harvard and everything went perfectly. But that may seem like ridiculous, even counting that as an austerity. Of course, you have to know how California people are. So, but that was just a simple example. It wasn't a great austerity, but it was something I had to do. So I think all of us can tighten up our lives. We can, who of us can say, I don't think I could say it, that I'm doing everything I possibly can to help Prabhupada rebuild his Western mission. And Prabhupada said, if you can't increase what I've given you, at least maintain it. That didn't happen. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not saying it's this person's fault or that person's fault. But I think collectively we should feel that all important obligation to Prabhupada to do everything we possibly can to rebuild his mission so that we don't leave this world with Prabhupada's mission just a fragment of what it was, a small thing compared to what it was. We owe it at least to Prabhupada to do everything possible to make that happen. So, Ramanreti, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
My pleasure. Thank you. Okay, so thank you all very much. I'm going to post now the link for my GoFundMe. I'm just kidding. That was
Thank you very
it's
much.
funny.
Maharaj. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for your presentation. Thank you.
Oh, Pracharnanda. He's probably the most accomplished poet in the Hare Krishna movement.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Pracharnanda is in Poland, and he's an old friend of mine. When I used to visit Poland many years ago, and he's the one that really took care of me there in Poland. And he's now won all these national awards in Poland for his poetry. And so he really is a famous poet in Poland. And we, of course, now they can translate into English. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for giving me your shelter, Maharaj, all the time. I'm always your debtor so much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Can I give you one more chance to be politically incorrect before you leave?
What's that?
There's some questions on the chat, but do you believe in this the positive side of interfaith preaching?
Okay, first, Ali. Where's Ali? Is she there? anyway, she had a question that perhaps at festivals attract the types of people who care about the world. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, festivals, conventions, everything. And just real quick from you, Balabhadra, how do we effectively spread Krishna consciousness in the present day? If you got Sukriti, oh, I answered that. Yashoda Kripa, the topic of healthy competition, even though our intent is not to compete with anybody and just serve our excellence and capabilities show up naturally. Incumbent leaders see this as a trouble for themselves out of insecurity. Whoa. I would say our intent is to compete, but selflessly for Krishna. I mean, not to compete because I want to win. I want to show that I'm better than you, but that because it's fun. Maybe it's a guy thing. I don't know, but it's I mean, especially if you have a male body, everyone that has a male body will know what I'm talking about. So leaders, ultimately, ISKCON, and I'm happy to say, at least certainly in the West, certainly in the Western Hemisphere, is not cultish. I mean, there's extraordinary amount of freedom. Everyone has the freedom to do something amazing for Prabhupada. And if you're wondering how, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Cristina Jimenez Vicedo. Catholic Church is booming both in France and the UK. Thank you. People are frustrated by decades of society not making the difference of right and wrong. Very good point. Yeah. And before, like if you went to a Catholic church in France, you were like, probably get government money for psychiatric help. I mean, that was their attitude. But now, yeah, because materialism, humanism, it doesn't work. It leaves people empty, no purpose, miserable, isolated, alienated, to use a good old word, which shows just how incredibly wrong Sartre was. So, yes, thank you, Christina. Who's Christina? Who is that actually, Christina? Oh, Hare Krishna. Thank you for that. So as far as interfaith, okay, here's the problem.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Haribo Maharaj, my name is Karunapurna. Just came up my civil name there, but my name is Karunapurna.
Oh, yeah, legal name. Okay, well, thanks for.
I'm happy with Christina as well.
No. I just didn't know what your name was, but thank you. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the upside and the downside of the interfaith movement. The upside is, of course, it's a nice opportunity to meet people from other religions, and build cooperation and mutual understanding. Not the problem. There's no problem with it. There's a limitation, and that is there's a certain relatively tiny group of people that do interfaith, and in almost all cases, they have absolutely no influence in their respective religions. So when you go to an interfaith program, it's not Gaudiya Vaishnavism dialoguing with Catholicism. It's one or two people from the Hare Krishna movement dialoguing with one or two people from the Catholic Church, and it's really not going to go very far beyond that. And so I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm not saying it's not a respectable service for those devotees who do it. There is some benefit. I'm just saying, though, we should not mistakenly think it is a dialogue between religions. It's not. It's a dialogue between a very tiny group of people that talk to each other on these things. I mean, there are some devotees in ISKCON, and they're very good devotees, who go to these things and have virtually almost no influence whatsoever. Maybe a tiny influence, but most of us have no idea what goes on with these things. No reports are published, and so that's the issue there. But it's nice. I mean, they're nice devotees, and it's a nice service. So this Vaishnav of ISKCON, the Alachua County Interfaith Council currently, would Krishna West be interested in designating representatives? Sure. Yeah, sure. Why not? This also gives us access to others interested. Yeah, I agree. So I'd be happy to. Maybe you could, whoever. Oh, that was Lalita. Where's Lalita? Oh, anyway, if you ever hear this, Lalita, please write me and we'll talk about it.
I will. Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, Lalita.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Haribo.
Haribo, yeah, please send me a note and we'll see about that.
Yeah, because they are going out and speaking publicly a lot in unison because of the current administration here in the United States. A lot of, a
Right,
lot of
right.
that. More involvement
Yeah.
than they really used to be. Because I've been on the Interfaith Council before, and I know what you're talking about with regard to it's not really, a sharing in that, grand thing. But because they are more active in the community, the Unitarian Universalists in particular, always social justice kind of events that they attend. That maybe we could be allowed to distribute books, I don't know, and share more
Yeah,
about
yeah,
peace,
meet people.
people striving for peace in Gaza. There's a lot of motivation for
yeah.
people to improve themselves so they can contribute to peace in the world.
Yeah, we can definitely, it would definitely be good to contact those people, start, yeah, definitely. I agree with you. So regarding Europe, someone wrote here, oh, you also wrote about Europe. Europe is a special case because in Europe, because of the way the EU is, if we are Hindus, we get a lot of money from the government. And so, I mean, it doesn't mean we're not Hindus. I mean, Lord Chaitanya sometimes said we're Hindus, but so it's not that we're not, but yeah, that's the thing. As far as the Hindu community, I should make one last point about that. And that is they're great souls. In North America, we have a lot of people from Indian background, and I sincerely see them as great souls. They are, pious, they're generous, they've been extremely kind to me. My own experience with mostly in North America dealing with the Indian community is they've been very, very kind to me, generous, helpful, hospitable. So I see them as wonderful Vaishnavas. And everything we talk about with Krishna West is I mean, it would be practically demonic not to see them as part of our family and not to love them and appreciate them, which I do. It's a strategic issue that we need to attract a lot of people in the Western world, especially people who have certain abilities and resources, in order to make Prabhupada's global vision a success. We can't save the world if we don't do that, according to Prabhupada. So has nothing to do with preferring one group over another. It's strategic. It's strategic. It's not anything else. But otherwise, I mean, in fact, I think the time has come, we need to follow the Indian community in ISKCON because they tend to be well educated, they tend to be affluent, they tend to be very sincere, very faithful, hospitable, generous. So I think those of us who are dedicated to trying to preach to Western people, there's a lot we can learn from the Indian devotees because they are very good devotees. So we're not criticizing them, we're learning from them and appreciating them. And it's important to make that very clear. So maybe I'll stop here. Do I have permission? Suniti, my handler?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you for taking the extra time to answer the questions. And thank you so much, everyone who is able to join us live. We're grateful for you all being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for making this happen. And of course, also Ramanariti.
Yes.
And Krishna, my thanks to everyone who attended or who listens to this later.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hasta luego.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Ciao.
Gracias.
Gracias, Suniti. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you so much.
Jai
Thank you, Srila
Charidev.
Charadeva.
Okay, Jai. Bueno.